with all of you here on this very special Shabbat, and to all of our families and friends at home. The room looks a little different, huh?
No, I go away for 2 weeks and you rearrange the furniture.
I wanted to throw you off a little bit.
You did, but it's interesting. I like it. We're closer to everybody.
Right?
So we'll try this experiment.
I like it.
Let's do it.
So there's a lot of congregations in different communities and different denominations that actually put the pulpit in the center, so that Torah is really at the core. Torah is at the center, so everybody can hear the Torah loudly and see the Torah for themselves. So we were thinking of trying that out a little bit and also getting a little bit closer to you. As per usual in our Nefesh Shabbat, we are so filled with music, and we would love for you to join with your hearts, your souls, and of course your voices. So please join us. We begin our service with Mizmor Shir.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
להגיד בבוקר חסדך,
הבוקר חסדך,
ואמונתך בלב, עלי עשור ועלי עבר, עלי יום בחירות.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
כי שמחתני אדוני בפועלך,
בפועלך,
במעשה ידיך ארנן. מה גדלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. שלום עליכם מלאכי השרת, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. בואכם לשלום מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלאכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ברכוני לשלום מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. צאתכם לשלום מלאכי השלום, מלאכי עליון. הקדוש ברוך הוא.
As we officially welcome Shabbat, I would like to invite our candle honorees, Margot Roth and Martha Schumann, to join me up here to light our candles.
Light, 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 light. Yeah, light, 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 light.
You can take us now. Yeah. Right into the mic.
Light, 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 light.
Ready?
As these Shabbat candles give light to all that behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which we live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Good.
Let us light these lights for the world tonight. Let our hearts unite in the light, in the light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Lichadlik ner shel Shabbat. Lichadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom. I want to just talk for a minute or two about what I think of as one of the great sentences in the Bible. I'm going to read from the end of chapter 22 of Leviticus, a part of our Torah portion for this Shabbat. Maybe you'll agree with me that this is as compact an expression of covenant as we have in the Tanakh. I'm going to just read the highlights of this verse. You shall faithfully observe my commandments, I am the Lord. You shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified in the midst of the Israelite people. I, the Lord, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I, the Lord. The verse ends with the description of the primary miracle in the entire Tanakh, and that is the liberation of the Israelites from Egypt. One can think of that as an event. One can think of it as creating the possibility of a new world, freedom, and with freedom comes potentiality, the possibility of living an ever richer life. This is God's act The verse, though, states that I may be sanctified in the midst of the Israelite people. This is quite an astonishing claim. It's God, we think of God in this worldview, who sanctifies us, who sanctifies the world, who sanctifies the Mishkan in the wilderness. The word to sanctify is in the passive voice here, that I may be sanctified among the people. It is we, according to this verse, who bring sanctity into the world, who bring the possibility of holiness, the possibility of embracing soaring values, the possibility of creating a humane world. We are the ones who initiate the possibilities inherent in sanctification. But what does it mean to say that I, God, will be sanctified? By enacting this transformation of our world through our actions, we bring the name of God into the world. We are the ones who make God's presence palpable through our actions. God does not come out in between the clouds and proclaim God's own name or values. We are the ones who do it. And by doing it, we complement God's act of giving us liberation and possibility with our act of bringing sanctity into the world. This is the idea of the partnership between God and our people. We're going to continue now in our prayer books on page 20 with the singing of Lecha Dodi. We're going to do verses 1, 2, and 9.
Ya la 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 lecha dodi. Ya la 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 libakara. Ya la 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 b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Ya la la lecha dodi. Ya la la likrat kala. Ya la la b'nei Shabbat. B'nei Shabbat nikabela.
Shamo וזכור בדיבורך, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה.
lecha dodi. Ya la la likrat kala. Ya la la b'nei Shabbat. B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Ya la lecha dodi. Ya la likrat kala. Ya la b'nei Shabbat. B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat לכוון אלך, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם ניסוחה, סוף מעשה ממחשבה תקילה. Ya la la lecha dodi. Ya la likrat kala. Ya la b'nei Shabbat. B'nei Shabbat nikabela. Ya la lecha dodi. Ya la likrat kala. Ya la Pnei Shabbat, Pnei Shabbat Lekabela.
We invite everyone to please rise if you are able and face the entrance where our Shabbat bride is entering.
Boi v'shalom, Ateret ba'ala, Gam b'simcha, Uv'tzochona, Toch emunei, Am Segola. Boi chala, boi chala, ya la 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 lecha dodi, ya la likrat kala, ya la Pnei Shabbat, Pnei Shabbat lekabela, ya la lecha dodi, ya la likrat kala, ya la Pnei Shabbat, Pnei Shabbat lekabela.
Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kivod Malachuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malachuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai
seated, and we join together now in the chanting of the V'ahavta. You can find the words on page 36.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'elem asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leod al yadecha v'hayu letodavot b'neinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru ve'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim le'elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'elohim ani Adonai Elohechem.
We turn now to page 39. At the top of the page, let's read together. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place of promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
Who is like you, Adonai? Who is like you, Adonai? Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilo.
We turn now in our prayer books to page 46, and we rise for the Amidah.
na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Sfatai tiftach. Na 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 Ufi yagid. Ufi yagid tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Sfatai tiftach. Na 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 Ufi yagid. Ufi yagid tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Sfatai tiftach. Na 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 Ufi yagid. Ufi yagid tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Sfatai tiftach. Na 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 Ufi yagid. Ufi yagid tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Nora El Elyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'Koneh Hakol V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imachot U'Mevi Geula Livnei Vanechem L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai Mechayecha Kol Atah Rav Lechoshia Morit Hatal Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed Mechayecha Kol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim Umatir Asurim Umechayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Baal Gevurot Umidom Elach Melech Memit Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua B'ne'emanat Halachayot Akol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh HaKol.
Let's turn to page 57 and let's read together. You are with us in our prayer, our love and our doubt, and our longing to feel your presence and to do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance, and let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. You may be seated.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amachar Tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amachar Tasim leolam.
Ki atah hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki atah hu melech adon שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב ישראל עמך תשים לעולם תשים לעולם תשים
We have several moments now for silent prayer.
יהיו לרצון עם רפי והגיון ליבי לפניך יהיו לרצון עם רפי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי אדוני צורי אדוני צורי אדוני צורי וגואלי אדוני צורי עם רפי והגיון ליבי לפניך והגיון ליבי לפניך היו לרצון עם רפי והגיון ליבי וגואלי היו לצורי אדוני עם רפי והגיון ליבי וגואלי
At this time, it is my pleasure to have you join me on page 244 for Seder Kriyat HaTorah. There is none like you among the gods, Adonai, and there are no deeds like yours. You are sovereign over all worlds, and your dominion is in all generations. Adonai reigns, Adonai has reigned, Adonai will reign forever and ever. Adonai will give strength to our people. Adonai will bless our people with peace. I invite you to please rise if you are able.
אין כמוך באלוהים אדוני ואין כמעשיך מלכותך מלכות כל עמים וממשלתך בכל דור ודור אדוני מלך אדוני מלך אדוני מלך לעולם ועד אדוני עוזר ייתן אדוני יברך את דמו בשלום הרחמים היטיבה ברצונך את ציון תבנה חומות ירושלים תבנה חומות ירושלים כי בך לבד
portrait of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teachings is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Ki mitzione teitei Torah, ki mitzione teitei Torah, u'devar Adonai miRushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, Torah, le'amo Yisrael b'kidushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai iti, uniromema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagiduna, hagivura, Temple-Tifereth, v'chanetzach v'chavod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. Lecha Adonai amamlecha, v'yamid na'aseh lechol erosh. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'yishachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu
feel like? What would it sound like? What would it look like if we said our name? Because our name does have a lot of meaning in it. And then talk about who we are in that moment in our life's journey. So I thought about it and, oh, I don't know. Perhaps I would say I'm a caring parent. I value honesty and integrity. I carve sacred Jewish time for my religious nourishment. I believe in responsible leadership. I'm motivated by love and creating significance. This, of course, is just an example, and I could go on and on and on. And if a first impression is an important impression, maybe perhaps we say the most important impression, then why would we answer the question, who are you, if what we do for a living, that's just one part of who we are. Sometimes it's not who we are at all. So perhaps one reason we don't do this is because we aren't accustomed to having our finger on the pulse, if you will, and constantly asking ourselves who we are in our life's journey in every moment. Or perhaps more practically speaking, it's just really too time-consuming to introduce yourself that way to a room full of people. Whatever the reason is, I'd like to suggest that even if we don't answer this question out of the depths of our souls out loud, we should be mindful about generating those answers for ourselves on a frequent basis. Our tradition values differentiation in time to help us distinguish between the sacred and the profane, right and wrong, good and bad, intentional and non-intentional. Because it is in that sacred space between the two opposites that we do the most significant work possible. And it is in that space that we create the most change and cultivate the most meaningful growth. And it is in that sliver of space that grounds us, and I would go so far as to say helps us find holiness. As we've been examining the book of Leviticus in the last few weeks, we know that it deals with laws around the sanctuary, and particularly in Parshat Emor, this week's Torah portion, we learn about the lives and the sacrifices the priests of the temple must make. Furthermore, Parshat Emor journeys us through the sacred time of the Jewish calendar, Shabbat, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, our free pilgrimage holidays, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And the entire Parsha guides the way we should separate, make different, and create distinct time. But the last chapter, chapter 24 of this Torah portion, grabs our attention because it has a totally different feel. Leviticus is a law code, unlike Genesis and Exodus, which reads in narrative form. And suddenly we're interrupted from the legal code and presented with a pretty difficult story. And it is only one of two stories that appear in the book of Leviticus. So the story begins with two men fighting without telling us what the quarrel is about. And in this argument, one of the men blasphemes God's name. He curses God and is put into immediate custody, of course. And we know from the Ten Commandments we must never blaspheme our parents' names, let alone God. God forbid, unintended. It's our third commandment. And the story ends somewhat equally abruptly, and it says that the man was punished very, very, very harshly. And we, along with the rabbis, ask ourselves, what is this story doing here? This Torah portion deals with policies of holiness and setting aside sacred time, and then ends with a narrative and a punitive like that. The text almost seems displaced, both in genre and in content. So what does sacred time have anything to do with using foul language? In order to understand the ending of this Torah portion, we go back and look at the first two books of our Torah. Exodus ends with the way Genesis begins, with an act of creation. Genesis begins with God's creation of the world, and Exodus begins with the Israelites' creation of the sanctuary, essentially the universe, but in miniature. Both beginnings are acts of constructive creations. In Genesis, God creates order and then gives human beings free will, which quickly turns to chaos. And it is only when human beings finish the creation of the sanctuary does the chaos turn back into order. There's a distinct and deliberate connection here. The completion of the sanctuary allows human beings to create a system of order, a holy place they made for God and for holiness. And this is very much at the center of our Torah. Right from the outset to the book of Genesis, we see the downfall of human behavior, Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit, leading us to understand the boundaries, dealing with permitted and forbidden. And a generation later, the story of Cain and Abel, where the eldest son commits murder. And in just 2 generations, God sees the difficulties human beings have with restrictions. What starts as a minor offense with fruit very quickly unfolds to something far more pervasive: murder. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks says, spiritual sins quickly lead to physical crimes. And these are precisely the incidences and many thereafter that lead to the necessity of sacred order, which leads to social order. They are one and the same, and they are interwoven. I'd like to circle back for a moment to our blasphemer. At the outset of the story, we read that this person did not commit any physical crime, but a transgression of speech, blaspheming God's name. And just as in the story of Adam and Eve, eating of the forbidden fruit or the apple doesn't cause harm to anyone physically, but leads to breaching of identified boundaries. What leads our blasphemer or our forbidden apple eaters to transgress in the first place? The sins that occur are a result of inner turmoil. People don't sin because they are inherently bad. They don't transgress because they are inherently wanting to cause harm. People do bad things when there is unrest within themselves. Our parsha helps us identify ways in which we can create more goodness and righteousness in ourselves through acts of holiness and time. Creating a sacred time and carving distinct boundaries is really meaningful work. It helps guide us on a righteous path. Because when we are not whole on the inside, when we do not feel that we have a sense of balance, a sense of equilibrium, it leads to corruption and immorality and sometimes dangerous acts. The time we set aside to evaluate our lives helps navigate us towards goodwill and patience and empathy and love. It allows us to dig into ourselves and see what needs to be repaired in our own souls, which is a lifelong journey. So perhaps next time someone asks you, "Who are you?" maybe, just maybe, you'll choose to answer, or at least think of the question just a little bit differently. At this time, I would like to read chapter 24, the story of the blasphemer.
We're very honored to call up Jay and Dr. Ann Singer for the blessings of the Torah.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamborach.
Baruch Adonai Havarach Leolam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamborach Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bacha Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Notein HaTorah. Amen.
ויצא בן אישה ישראלית, והוא בן איש מצרי בתוך בני ישראל. ויניצו במחנה בן הישראלית ואיש הישראלי. ויקוב בן האישה הישראלית את השם, ויקלל, and curse, ויביאו אותו אל משה, ושם אמו שולמית, בת דברי למטה דן. ויניחוהו ממשמר לפרוש להם על פי אדוני. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור, הוצא את המקלל אל מחוץ למחנה, וסמכו כל השומעים את ידיהם על ראשו, ורגמו אותו כל העדה ואל בני ישראל, תדבר לאמור איש איש כי יקלל אלוהו וינשא חטאו. There came out among the Israelites a man whose mother was an Israelite and whose father was an Egyptian. And a fight broke out in the camp between that half-Israelite and the son of the Israelite woman and a certain Israelite. And the son of the Israelite woman spoke the name of God in blasphemy. And he was brought to Moses. And this man's mother was named Shilamit, daughter of Dibri, of the son Dibri of the tribe of Dan, and was placed in custody until the decision of Adonai should be made clear to them. And Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, take the blasphemer outside of the camp, and let all who were within hearing lay their hands upon his head, and let the community leadership punish him to death. And to the Israelite people speak thus, anyone who blasphemes God shall bear the guilt.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Olam Asher Natan Lanu Torat Emet V'chayei Olam Nota B'tochenu Baruch Ata Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen.
We can kiss.
We pause now, as we always do at this point in our service, to take into our hearts those members of our families and circle of friends who are ailing at this point of body, of mind, of spirit. I'm going to read from the list that we have, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to mention either out loud or within your own hearts those about whom you are thinking, so that with the feeling and the power of our congregation, we can pray together for their return to health. We think especially on this occasion about Yamima Barron, Nancy Friedman, Amelia Hegarty, Maddie Jefferson, Byron Krantz, Anna Majerovitz, Richard Moore, Bob Shippey, and Sandra Tarrant. As my hand passes over your section of the congregation, feel free to mention the names of those about whom you are thinking.
Ed Hershey, Kenneth Gordon, Alice Mark.
Let us sing the Mishabera prayer together. You can find the words on page 253.
Mishaberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
And now to celebrate the presence of Torah in our people's midst, I ask you please to rise. And on page 256, Yahalalu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai, for God's name alone is exalted.
Hodo aretz v'shamayim, mayoram mayorem keren le'amo, tehila tehila le'chol chasidav, livnei Yisrael gerovu. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
For I have given you good instruction, do not abandon my Torah. It is a tree of life for those who hold fast to it, and all its supporters are happy. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Return us to you, Adonai, and we will return. Renew our days as of old.
Etz chaim mehi lemachziki v'tomchecha meushar derachecha darelom v'chol netivotecha shalom.
You may be seated. At this time, I invite everyone to join me on page 278. We are in a very unique time. We are in the counting of the Omer, Sfirat HaOmer, which begins at Pesach, at our Seder tables, and takes us into the holiday of Shavuot, that 7-week period. And we will take a moment to acknowledge where we are in that time.
Hineni mukhan u'mezuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel Sefirat HaOmer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Sefirat HaOmer.
היום 27 יום שהם 3 שבועות ו6 ימים לעומר. Today is the 27th day, which is 3 weeks and 6 days of the Omer.
Amen.
Amen. There are stars up above, so far away we can only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with the people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us. As we live our days, these are the ways we remember. At this time, we take a moment to think of those who are no longer with us, but whose memories will be in our hearts forever. We take a moment and hold into our hearts those who were laid to rest this week: Susan T. Diener, Evie Morris. We take into our hearts those who were laid to rest in the last 30 days: Marty Deutsch, Ilan Gilon, Nancy L. Jacobs, Toby Devin Lewis, Irwin Irv Reynolds Rabin, Morris Mudd Wiedenthal, Roger Horowitz, Barbara Morrissey Myers, Robert Bob Roth, Ronald Zucker, Robert Jones, Marjorie Kempner, S. Howard Reese, Mark Richmond, Edwin Z. Singer, and Zila Terry. At this time, we also remember those whose yahrzeit fall at this time: Jeanette Julian Stern Abramson, Joseph Amster, Marie R. Ackerman, Molly Bell, Benny Benson Benjamin, Max S. Bergman, William J. Bielowski, Lucy Joseph Bing, Hinia Ninsman Bonder, Alfred Brock, Mayhem Brooks, Kitty Guerin Clark, Lloyd H. Fetter, Harry K. Fox, Dorothy Frankel, Marion B. Garson, Anna Grossman Geiger, Anna Goldman, David H. Greenberg, Janet Greenberg, Rachel S. Gross, Leo Halpert, Yetta Halpert, Benjamin Hart, Sylvester Hertz, Lillian Gilbert Hockman, Bartold Holstein, Ethel Kaplan, Addie Kasowitz, Edwin K. Klein, Melvin S. Kranzow, Abraham Crone, Matilda May Lefkoff, Hilda Stern Levin, Samuel Albert Levin, Joyce Levine, Maurice H. Leibowitz, William H. Loveman, Stanley Lovett, Jack Mandel, Sadie R. Mandel, E. Robert Marcus, Edward Meisel, Milton G. Myers, Ethel Nathanson, Fred Nathanson, Alan Richard Newman, Lloyd Freed Plaskow, Gilda Pollock, Gertrude Sherby Rand, Margaret E. Reinheimer, Miriam Blum Richmond, Samuel W. Richmond, Bertha Rosenberg, A. Charles Shaw, Joan Schmertz, Stephen Robert Schreibman, Ronald Lewis Schumann, Irma R. Seed, Elise Seligman, Arthur Shore, Calby Smith, Virginia Spivak, Morris H. Stoller, Sidney Stein, Barbara Forstrauss, Carol Ann Taylor, Mort A. Unger, Myron Joseph Erdang, Brian Elliott Rebel. At this time, if you would like to share the passing of a loved one, or if I have mispronounced any of the names, I invite you to say their name aloud or in your hearts as I meet you. At this time, if you are in a period of Shiva or have lost someone in the last 7 days, I invite you to please rise. Anyone who has lost someone in the last 30 days and is in a period of Shloshim, I invite you to please rise. And for those of you marking a yard site, I invite you to please rise. And now, as a caring community, I invite everyone to please rise so we may join our mourners and recite the Kaddish on page 294. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעלם ועלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קדושה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן מעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen. May their memory be for our blessing in our hearts always, and together we say,
shalom
you may be seated.
From time to time, I have been asked, and I'm sure the other clergy has as well, why we put the Shehechianu moments where we do in the service. Why not express our gratitude at the beginning of the service or some place in the middle? Perhaps you've noticed that we always move to the Shehechianu moments right after the Kaddish. And this, I think, is deliberate and powerful. When we say Kaddish, we think of our beloved deceased, all they meant to us, and the sadness we feel that they are no longer with us. And this is a real part of life, and the sadness accompanies that real aspect of life, and we can't diminish it. On the other hand, we try not to allow sadness to be our prevailing mood. And so we move from the recitation of the Kaddish in memory of our loved ones to a sense of thankfulness and gratitude for what we have in our lives, so that we approach the future each day with a sense of optimism and aspiration, and a feeling that nevertheless, I might say, in spite of the slings and arrows with which we are beset from time to time, that life is good. I'm going to read Shehechianu moment that somebody sent in to us, and then I'm going to suggest that we pause for a moment of silence, close our eyes, and try to focus on a Shehechianu moment that we have experienced in the last day or so. Something for which we are grateful, something for which we give thanks, something that energizes our hours and our days. Susan Levine. Mazel tov to Susan, who celebrated her birthday on May 12th. Howard and Susan Levine have streamed Shabbat every Friday since March 13th, 2020, the beginning of the pandemic, and find in it the relaxing way to conclude our week before our, they say their, Shabbat meal. Something for which they are grateful, and we're grateful for their gratefulness. Let's pause and each of us try to focus on a moment in the last 24, 48 hours for which we are thankful. And let's join in the singing of the Shehechianu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
We read in the book of Psalms that wine gladdens the human heart. So let us celebrate our great bounty, singing of the Kiddush.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Barei pari hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam אשר קדשנו במצוותיו וירצבנו בשבת קודשו באהבה ורצון הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש זכר לציון מצרים קיבלנו בחרת יודענו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש
Amen. Chaim.
What do we have?
And let's join together in the blessing over our bounty.
Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Piece here to Jack.
What a nice big hunk. And a little one for you. We're going to conclude our service with the singing of Adon Olam. You can find the words on page 321.
The Jay Singer version. Let's do it.
Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Hey, Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Goyim Tzir Nivra Le'et Nasa B'chavto Kol Hazai Melech Shemo Nivra. Hey, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Ya la ya la ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Yehu Eli v'chai go'ali v'tzur chavli b'ein tzara v'hu nisi u'manosi menot kosi v'yom. ביעדו אפי רוחי, באתי שם ויעירה, ואם רוחי ביעתי, אדוני לי ואלוהי.
Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai varech et amo v'shalom. May the Lord give strength to God's people. May the Lord bless all of God's peoples with the blessings of shalom, of peace. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Hava, Hava Nashira, Shir Hallelujah, Shir Hallelujah. Hava, Hava Nashira, Shir Hallelujah, Shir Hallelujah. Hava, Hava Nashira, Shir Hallelujah, Shir Hallelujah. Hava Nashira, Shir Hallelujah, Shir Hallelujah. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Julian Berger Shabbat Band. Thank you. Julian, thank you, everybody.